The wind howled across the snowy plains, cutting through every layer of clothing like tiny icy needles. The young Apache woman struggled forward, each step heavier than the last. Snow crunched beneath her boots, but her toes felt as if they were encased in ice. She pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders, trying to hold in what little warmth she had left, but the cold was relentless. Her hands, though covered with gloves, were stiff and numb. Even breathing seemed like a challenge, the frigid air burning her lungs. She had left her small village early that morning to gather supplies. The journey should have been simple, a short trip across familiar land, but the winter storm had arrived faster than anyone had expected. Thick clouds covered the sky, dimming the weak sunlight. The snow fell heavier than before, and the familiar trails vanished under a blanket of white. She had never faced such a storm, not even in the harsh winters she had known as a child. Panic tried to rise in her chest, but she pushed it down, reminding herself that she could survive. Hours passed. Her body trembled uncontrollably, not from fear but from the cold. Her boots were soaked, her legs heavy, and the icy wind seemed to mock her efforts. She stumbled over a hidden patch of ice and fell hard, the snow pressing into her face. For a moment, she lay there, gasping, listening to the wind roar. She tried to lift herself, but the strength in her legs was fading. Pain shot through her toes, a sharp, burning pain that made her cry out softly. Frostbite had begun. Her mind raced. She had heard the elders speak of it, of fingers and toes turning blue and black and the danger it brought. I can't go much farther, she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the wind. Her lips were chapped and blue, and her words felt strange in her frozen mouth. She tried to stand again, clinging to a small tree for support, but the effort made her dizzy. Panic prickled at the edges of her mind. If she did not find warmth soon, she could lose more than just feeling in her toes. She could lose herself. The snow stretched endlessly in every direction. The world was a white blur, trees bending under the weight of ice, the sky a pale gray that offered no hope of sun. She knew the village was somewhere behind her, but how far she had wandered, she could not tell. Every landmark she recognized was buried beneath snow. She called out weakly, her voice almost swallowed by the wind. "Help! Please!" Hours seemed like days. The woman's body was weakening, and every movement required immense effort. She sank to her knees, shivering violently, trying to find a way to shield herself from the biting wind. She curled into herself, trying to conserve heat. She could feel frostbite spreading, her toes growing numb, and the sharp burning in them refused to fade. Fear coiled tightly in her chest. What if no one came? What if she was lost forever in this frozen expanse? Meanwhile, a rancher was returning home after a long day. He drove slowly along the snow-covered trail, eyes squinting against the swirling flakes. His small property lay ahead, nestled between rolling hills and forests, and he noticed something unusual, a faint movement far off the road. Curiosity mixed with concern, he slowed his truck and peered into the distance. At first, he thought it might be an animal, a deer or a fox, struggling in the deep snow. But then, he saw the outline of a human figure, barely moving, fighting against the storm. He jumped out of the truck, boots sinking into the snow, and began walking toward the figure. The closer he got, the more he could see the woman's condition. She was tiny against the vast white landscape, her shawl barely covering her shivering form. Her face was pale, lips blue, and eyes half closed in exhaustion and fear. "Are you okay?" he called, his voice steady but full of concern. She tried to answer, but her words were weak and trembling. I got frostbite. I need warmth," she whispered. He quickly wrapped his coat around her shoulders, his own body shielding her from the wind. The rancher could feel how cold she was, her tiny frame shaking uncontrollably. He took her hand, it was ice cold, stiff from the frostbite, and guided her carefully toward his truck. Her legs were nearly useless, and the snow was deep, but he refused to let her fall again. Finally, they reached the truck. He helped her inside and started the engine, letting the warmth from the heater slowly seep into her frozen body. Her teeth chattered violently, and she buried her face in her hands, ashamed that she was so weak, ashamed that she needed help. But the rancher spoke gently, not judging, only offering reassurance. "You're safe now," he said simply. "We'll get you warm." As the truck moved toward his cabin, she tried to explain her journey. She spoke slowly, each word requiring effort, telling him she had left early to gather supplies for her family and had gotten lost in the storm. The rancher listened quietly, nodding, understanding the seriousness of her situation. She was exhausted, her body battered by the cold and fatigue. The cabin finally appeared through the snow, a small, sturdy structure with smoke rising from the chimney. The rancher opened the door and helped her inside. The warmth hit her immediately, making her gasp with relief. He wrapped her in thick blankets, guided her to a chair near the fire, and offered her a cup of hot herbal tea. She held the cup with trembling hands, the warmth seeping into her fingers and toes, slowly chasing away the icy pain. The woman could hardly believe it. In the midst of such a lonely, harsh world, someone had found her. Someone had cared enough to bring her to safety. The fear that had consumed her moments before began to lift, replaced by gratitude and awe. She looked at the rancher, trying to find words to express the relief that filled her heart. But all she could manage was a small, shaky smile. Hours passed, and the storm outside raged on. But inside the cabin, the woman began to recover, the warmth slowly returning to her frozen body. She felt tired but alive. And with each sip of tea, her strength returned a little more. The rancher stayed by her side, offering blankets, food, and quiet reassurance. She shared pieces of her story, of her village and her family, and he listened, understanding the bravery it had taken for her to face the storm alone. By evening, the snow had settled slightly, and the wind calmed to a softer howl. She sat near the fire, finally able to feel her fingers and toes again, though the memory of the cold lingered. She knew frostbite could have lasting effects, but for now, she was safe. She thought of her journey home and how different it might have ended without the rancher's help. The terror she had felt just hours before seemed almost unreal, replaced by a deep sense of gratitude. She realized how fragile life could be in the face of nature's fury. And she also realized the strength of kindness, the power of one person's willingness to help another. The world could be harsh. The storm could be merciless. But there were still people who would reach out their hand when someone needed warmth. As night fell, the rancher checked on her one last time before settling down himself. She looked around the cabin, the fire crackling, the blankets keeping her warm, the smell of tea and cooked food, and felt a sense of hope she had almost lost. Somewhere in the vast, cold world, she had found safety, and she knew she would never forget the day a stranger became her lifeline in the snow. Even in the quiet moments, she felt the story of that storm linger in her mind. She would tell her family. She would remember the rancher's kindness, and she would carry it with her forever. The frostbite had tested her body, the snow had tested her spirit, but she had survived, and that survival was because of a human heart willing to help when it mattered most. The warmth from the fire slowly seeped into the young Apache woman's frozen body, making her shiver subside little by little. She sat, wrapped in thick blankets, holding a steaming cup of herbal tea, her hands still trembling but no longer stiff with ice. The rancher knelt beside her chair, his calm presence giving her courage. He had lit a bigger fire and had set up a pot of warm water, ready to help her care for the frostbite on her toes. "Try to relax," he said gently. "We'll take care of this together. You're safe now." The woman nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you, sir," she said, the words shaky but sincere. Her eyes reflected relief, exhaustion, and disbelief all at once. She had been so close to being lost in the snow, so close to a danger she could not have faced alone. And now, she was safe. The rancher helped her slowly take off her wet boots and socks. Her toes were red and swollen, painful from the frostbite, but at least they were warm. He gently wrapped each foot in soft cloths, soaked in warm water, taking care not to hurt her. She gasped softly as the warmth touched her skin, almost feeling like a miracle after hours in the snow. "You're doing fine," the rancher said kindly. The woman closed her eyes, focusing on the warmth and the comforting sound of the fire crackling. Her body still ached from exhaustion, but the pain was softened by the kindness around her. She thought about her journey, how she had left early that morning, carrying small packages for her family, confident she could make it home before the storm arrived. But nature had been stronger than she expected, and she had underestimated its power. I got lost," she whispered. "I didn't know which way to go. The snow, it covered everything. I thought I would never get home." Her voice trembled as the memory of fear returned. She shivered. Not from the cold, but from the memory of being alone and helpless in the endless white. The rancher listened quietly, nodding. He could see how brave she had been to keep moving, even when her body was failing her. "You did everything you could," he said softly. "It's not your fault. Nature is unpredictable. But now, you're safe. You can rest, and then we'll figure out the next step together." She took another sip of tea, feeling the warmth spread through her chest and limbs. The rancher moved to the kitchen area and brought a small plate of food, soft bread, some cheese, and a few pieces of dried fruit. She had not eaten for hours, her body too busy trying to survive the cold. Her stomach growled quietly, reminding her of the importance of nourishment. "Eat slowly," the rancher advised. "Your body needs strength." She nodded and started nibbling at the bread, surprised at how much better she felt after even a small amount of food. Every bite was comforting, not just to her hunger, but to her spirit. She realized how much she had taken warmth, food, and safety for granted until now. Each simple act of care felt monumental in the midst of the storm she had endured. The rancher settled into a chair near her, giving her a sense of security without crowding her. He spoke gently about the weather outside, telling her it might take some time before it was safe to leave. She listened quietly, appreciating his calmness and knowledge. For someone who had been on the edge of despair, the sound of normal life, the fire, soft talking, the smell of food was a welcome relief. Hours passed. The woman's body continued to recover, though her toes remained sensitive. She slowly gained strength, enough to speak more clearly, to share her story, without trembling so much. She spoke of her family, her small village, and the responsibilities she carried as one of the older daughters. She told him about the importance of their traditions, the way her people respected the land, and the courage needed to survive even simple tasks like crossing a snowy plain. The rancher listened, fascinated by her stories and moved by her honesty. He could see the pride in her eyes, even though she was exhausted and scared. "Your family is lucky to have you," he said sincerely. "You are strong and brave, even when the storm tried to break you." The woman smiled weakly, the warmth in her chest growing not just from the fire, but from the kindness of someone who truly cared. She realized that survival wasn't just about physical strength, it was also about the help and compassion of others. Without him, she would have been lost. She could feel the bond of trust forming, a quiet understanding that some kindnesses change a life forever. As night fell, the storm outside softened to a gentle snow. The rancher checked the woman's feet again, making sure the frostbite had not worsened. He added extra blankets around her shoulders and offered her another cup of warm tea. She drank slowly, savoring each sip, feeling warmth seep into her frozen extremities. "You will need time to rest," the rancher said. Your body has been through a lot. Sleep now, if you can. She nodded, finally allowing herself to relax completely. The exhaustion she had fought so hard against all day began to take over. As she drifted into sleep, she felt the security of the cabin wrap around her like a second blanket. For the first time in hours, she allowed herself to believe she was truly safe. During the night, the rancher checked on her periodically. She slept deeply, her body repairing itself, and he made sure the fire stayed steady. Outside, the snow continued to fall gently, but inside, there was only warmth and care. He thought about the brief encounter, how fate had led him to notice a small movement in the snow, and how a single act of awareness had saved a life. He understood that sometimes, the simplest gestures offering warmth, listening, caring, could mean everything to someone in need. Morning arrived with soft sunlight filtering through the cabin windows. The storm had ended, leaving the world sparkling white and quiet. The woman woke slowly, feeling stronger than the day before. Her hands and feet were warmer, her body steadier. She looked around, taking in the cabin, the fire, and the rancher sitting nearby. Gratitude filled her heart so fully she could barely speak at first. Thank you, she whispered again, more confidently this time. You saved me. The rancher smiled gently. You saved yourself too, he said. You kept going even when it was hard. That's courage. I just helped a little. Not. She nodded, realizing that courage alone was not enough in moments like these. It took kindness, guidance, and someone willing to step forward to make a difference. She thought of her family back home, and a sense of urgency returned. She would need to travel safely to reach them. The rancher prepared her for the journey. He packed extra blankets, some food, and hot drinks for the road. He gave her clear directions, pointing out landmarks that would guide her back safely. She listened carefully, committing each detail to memory. Before leaving, she hugged him, a simple gesture of deep appreciation and connection. I will never forget you, she said, tears in her eyes. You showed me what kindness truly is. He nodded, smiling. Just remember to help others when you can. That's all anyone asks. With the morning light guiding her, she stepped out into the world again. The snow crunched beneath her feet, but it was no longer a sound of fear. Each step was filled with hope and strength, knowing she had been helped when she was at her weakest. The village lay ahead, waiting, and she felt ready to face it. The journey had been harsh, but she carried a lesson she would never forget, that in the midst of life's storms, human kindness can warm even the coldest heart. She moved forward carefully, aware of the frostbite, yet grateful for every step she could take. Behind her, the rancher watched from his porch, a quiet satisfaction in his heart. The storm had tested both the woman and the world around her, but they had endured. One life had been saved that night, not just by survival instinct, but by care, compassion, and simple human warmth. Even as the wind whispered through the trees and the snow sparkled under the sunlight, the memory of that night stayed with her, a reminder that even in the harshest conditions, hope and humanity could shine brighter than the coldest storm. And she knew, with certainty, that she would carry that warmth forever.